Welcome back in here to Newsmax Now. We're going to start a roundtable segment. John Bachman, Miranda Khan, and with us here on set, Javier Manjarres. Hopefully we'll have Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Aronberg with us here in a few moments. But we wanted to, you got something you want to say?
I have to do it. It's Manjarres, right?
Manjarres, come on, please.
You told me not to pronounce it. You told me to use my Anglo accent.
You lived in Spain,
call me
though.
whatever
You can roll R's better.
I just like to call him Javier. But let's talk a little bit about the situation in Cleveland. The Department of Justice reaching a settlement with the Cleveland Police Department and the city to come in there and oversee some changes that they say need to be made. The Department of Justice says it found a history of racial profiling and the like in the Cleveland Police Department. But Javier, my question for you, considering you are a conservative, do you think that the federal government can effectively supervise a local police department and help them do a better job?
I'm sure they'll tell you they can, but I think it should be left to the state and those local officials. Look, again, we don't know behind the whole story behind what happened in Cleveland. Again, you mentioned racial profiling. How do you profile anyone? When you hear an APB, hey, looking for a black man with 6'5".
I should clarify because they said a pattern of excessive force and civil rights violation, not necessarily racial profiling, but this comes in, in the wake of the verdict in the Officer Brelo trial that we just saw play out.
Right, he was acquitted of manslaughter.
Right.
Him and how many other officers shot into that cop? I think it was over 150 bullet shots into the
20-mile chase that wound up.
Right, and so obviously, to me, common sense. Anyone who's being chased by the cops and eluding arrest has done something very bad. So what's that vehicle alone is a deadly weapon. So we don't know if the car lunged towards the officers. We don't know the whole story.
No, we don't, but some of the details are supposed to come out soon today. But you did mention racial profiling. That was not the case in this particular incident, but this happened in Ferguson, Missouri, according to a court there, found that there were instances of racial issues going on in that police department. And it's hard when we see all these different cases going around the country. It's easy to get them kind of confused. But you said that's actually happened to you before.
I've been racial profiled, and I had no problem with it. I was once pulled over coming out of driving from Houston to Austin because I fit the mold of a single Hispanic male as a drug mule. I didn't have a problem with it because I fit that profile.
Well, I believe we've established our connection with Dave Aronberg. Dave, do we have you with us now?
Sure do.
All right, Dave, I wanted to get your reaction and to get your take on this because you know this arena better than most. The decision reached between the Department of Justice and the Cleveland Police Department so they could supervise some changes that the DOJ says needs to happen in the city of Cleveland. Does this concern you at all when the federal government gets involved with the local police department? Obviously some changes need to take place, but this is the best mechanism to make those changes.
Well, apparently there's been precedent for this in the past, and I don't know all the specific changes that were made. I think part of it is yet to be revealed. But something needs to be done as if nothing else, as a symbol to the protesters that people are listening, that there's some sort of oversight. Now, whatever it is, like I said, I haven't seen all the details of it, but I don't have a problem with the federal government doing what they're supposed to is to look at matters from more of a 20,000-foot view.
Speaking of protests, I think we need to bring up what's going on with the Ferguson, Missouri. Have you guys heard about this? These protesters that were out in Ferguson, Missouri, they're now taking to Twitter and doing sit-ins because they weren't. John apparently was well aware of this happening all the time, that protesters are sometimes paid. But basically, they're taking to Twitter because they're saying they haven't been paid for protesting in Ferguson, Missouri. And you've said you've run into that all the time because you've gone from one protest to another and you keep seeing the same people over and over again. I'd never heard of this, but apparently some of them are owed $5,000.
Well, who actually hired them, those protesters? I mean,
it's some offshoot of Acorn.
So the crimes committed in Ferguson are groups like Acorn responsible here?
I don't know if we can say that for sure. That these
Acorn doesn't exist anymore. I thought Acorn.
That's the problem. This is a kind of subgroup tied to Acorn somehow. The group was called MORE. The acronym, the Missouri something.
Missouri Organization, something of that effect, but. Just the idea of this.
See, Democrats don't pay. That's why even join these organizations.
Well, I think it crosses
party lines. Have you ever heard of this? Protesters getting paid?
Well, there are. I'm sure it happens, but as far as to such a mass scale, no. And is that so? So they're taking to Twitter saying that they have not been paid. You know,
Right,
obviously
they're
that's
protesting
something-
because they didn't get paid for protesting.
Hashtag
no,
cut the
that's
check.
something
That's what
that's,
they're saying.
that's not going to be a positive for anyone to hear that kind of stuff, obviously.
It also
They're just like paid volunteers. We've heard of paid volunteers
Right.
during campaign cycles.
It's
I mean,
exactly,
what it
it's
is.
very similar, Javier, a very similar issue when you have a group of people out there holding signs for one particular candidate, and
Right.
any enterprising reporter knows you can go up there and ask some questions really quickly and find out that these folks, not necessarily part of the movement, so to speak, they're out there because they're getting a few dollars to hold these
And
signs.
$5,000. I mean, they're making more than some of the people make at McDonald's or something.
Maybe it's a new career move for John.
I don't think John's
No?
going to do that.
Side job.
Maybe, if the right issue comes up. Guys, we'll talk about some more issues coming back. Dave Aronberg's with us on Skype. Javier Manjarres with us on the set.
There you go. Roll those R's.
We'll be back.
All right, everybody is warmed up. Welcome back to round 2 of our roundtable with State Attorney and former Senator of Florida State, Dave Aronberg, and Managing Editor of the Shark Tank, Javier Manjarres.
Nicely
You
done,
got
Miranda.
it. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't overdo the R, so did I? Okay. Let's take a moment, guys, and look at the GOP candidates in the presidential race for 2016. You ready? It's a big one. Do we have the graphic? There we go. Running. There we have Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, all in the race. Fiorina, Mike Huckabee. Looking pretty good, right? Now let's compare that back to the candidates that were running in 2012, which consisted of Ron Paul, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, Rick Perry, and Rick Santorum dropped out, but as well as Herman Cain. So what do you think of this? Before we show the results of the poll, I want to get your reaction. What do you think of this lineup? Is it better this time around?
Better. I think these are candidates I think a lot more people can get behind. A lot of the candidates from 2008 and 2012, I think, were good candidates in their own right, but I think they lacked a lot of the substance that the Rubios, the Rand Pauls, and the Ted Cruzes bring to the table.
So as a conservative, are you more excited, more confident?
Well,
about
I'm
this
pretty
election?
confident. I'm pretty sure that there'll be a Republican president this time around because of what the Republicans have to pick from, what the American public has to pick from.
Now, Dave, I know these are Republicans, but what is your opinion of this?
It's definitely a more diverse field.
Okay.
And I do think it's a stronger field than 4 years ago. I think you have definitely different tiers. You know, you have Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and Scott Walker at the top, and then you have others and, you know, first-time candidates who have, like a Ben Carson, for example, who's a neighbor of ours right here in West Palm Beach, who will not be president, but he's an interesting candidate. And I think that the field overall is stronger than it was 4 years ago.
Well, others apparently agree because likely Republican voters are now happier, according to a new poll, with this go around, these picks right there. There you have it. Happy with the candidates 2016, 57% say, yep, they're happy. That compares to 44% back in 2011. So you're not alone.
My question for Javier, though, is if you think this will actually translate to the general election, because there was concern about the turnout in 2012 for Mitt Romney. A lot of Republican voters and independent voters who tend to lean Republican said, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out. I don't like either one of these guys a lot, not enough to get off my tuchus and go to the polls.
I agree, and I think that
Took
us aside. I think that they will come out and get behind someone like a Rubio or someone like a Scott Walker, whose messages transcend across party lines, who inspire. Their speeches inspire, and that's a lot of people vote on emotion. Unfortunately, I think, but still, someone like Rubio, Walker, even Ted Cruz can make a big difference.
But Dave, if we wind up with a Jeb Bush, do you think there will be a lot of folks just resign and be like, we're back in the same old establishment candidate circle that we wound up in last time, and again, I'm going to sit this one out?
I think you're going to see that. If Jeb Bush is the nominee, I think you'll see people with Bush-Clinton fatigue sitting out. And I think Javier is right that the candidates he mentioned, whether it's Rubio, Scott Walker, Ted Cruz is not going to be the nominee, but he does add more excitement to the race than Jeb Bush, who is trying to distance himself from his brother and is having trouble to do so.
And he's also having trouble with actually formally announcing, because he kind of did, and we were all talking about that during the break. He kind of said, running for president, and then why not just come out and say, okay, I slipped up, I am running.
We know the reason. There's a legal reason why he's not officially running.
Well, I would like to point out first that Mr. Aronberg has pulled out his magic ball, crystal ball, and announced that two candidates will not be.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask
Carson
you about that.
and Cruz will not be president.
That's what he
That's
said.
the great thing about the
what do you
internet.
think?
Now.
The
we have it
Swami.
on record.
Do you agree?
Well, I'm not going to. I don't know what's going to happen. I think there's many October surprises that can happen over the course of this whole election cycle. So anything can happen. You never know. I mean, look at with Herman Cain. He went pretty far, and no one expected him to go as far as he did. But
and Carson
and
did very
Rick
well in the straw
Santorum
poll
as well. Well, yeah, and we also talked about this earlier. But we'll bring this question up again. We had Ben Carson winning the Southern Republican leadership straw poll, which Mitt Romney won last time around. These straw polls are in question now. Dave, do you think these straw polls serve any purpose whatsoever in the so-called silly season early on here in these elections?
Yeah, straw polls serve the purpose of embarrassing the front runner. That's what they do, and it's really it's the most active members of the party. And the only time a straw poll, to my knowledge, ever meant anything was when Marco Rubio ran for U.S. Senate, and the straw polls started to show that he was gaining traction. And eventually, overtook Charlie Crist, the presumptive nominee. But other than that, I can't think of a time when a straw poll meant anything in a presidential race, especially.
well, they help with fundraising. You know, so if you expect the emails that come through the mail.
Oh, I've already started getting
but
some
Ben
emails,
Carson
yeah.
that he won. He's going to be the next president. So
And
it works.
Well, I heard Ben Carson speak down here to a big group. He said a whole lot of nothing. And so I think as his campaign gets fleshed out on the campaign trail, you'll see him start to drop.
Did you see that new straw poll in Palm Beach County that Dave Aronberg will be running for dog catcher of the county? He's in the lead.
he is. He's got the early
I
inside
think
track.
that was a little
on that
dig
race.
at you.
Be very good at it, Javier.
I bet you are.
All right, so real quickly out of that GOP lineup, who do you think is the strongest? Dave, go.
Oh, Marco Rubio, I think, will be the best general election candidate. I think Jeb Bush will probably get the nomination, though.
Right now, I see Rubio, Cruz, or Walker, not Jeb Bush.
All right, there you go. Some predictions made right here on Newsmax Now. We got more coming back right after this.